Now you can go.
Yeah.
Conversion rampant.
I just grabbed something.
So they're
More or less $400.
It's gonna be a complicated RFP, it's got all those, decision points in it. You know, you can do it one way or you do it another way, or you don't change the sewer at all. I asked him, how did you do the last rate study?
Instead of eating lunch
There wasn't an RFP.
during
Directly procurement, statement of work.
back on to address that's two converging.
Oh, right. Yeah, so we'll make those changes.
No, we're not.
We can definitely say we want to make these changes. Good to go, whenever.
It's after 1:30. It's 1:32. This is Wednesday, March 7th, and this is the Water Resources.
Really gonna have to speak up.
You can't hear me?
Very little.
Would you speak to what?
Did the mics work?
Can they turn the speak, the mic
Yeah, the
on?
mic works. You can just push that button.
Just don't think out loud.
This is it's May 7th. This is the San Luis Obispo County Water Resources Advisory Committee meeting. It's 1:32, and we will need to determine a quorum. So if you are a voting member on the WRAC, would you please raise your hand? Wow. Sorry, we're doing this again. Okay, and so for introductions, we will start with Mr. Eby over here on the right side.
Ed Eby, Napomo CSD.
Craig Armstrong, Napomo CSD.
Jane from Planning and Oakland County.
Daniel DeBrito, Long Range Planning.
Hi, everybody. I'm Linda Seifert. I'm a new member, and this is my first official meeting. And just by way of background, if I could I was a supervisor in Solano County where we had our own issues around SIGMA. So I've been here now about 6 months and sat on our water board as well. So I like to think I bring some knowledge, but not certainly about all the local issues. So I'm delighted to be here and look forward to getting to know you.
What entity do you represent?
I beg your pardon?
What entity do you represent?
District 3.
Oh, thank you.
Welcome.
I'm Natalie Reisner, and I'm Linda's alternate. Environmental alternate. Jamie Hendrickson, Healthcare Mutual Water Company.
Steph Wall, Central Coast Hampton.
Patricia Wilmore, Paso Robles Wine Country Alliance. Bob Harmon, Rio Grande City Council.
Bill Dawson, Close Second District.
Tony Lindstrom, Golden State Water.
Dennis Wallace, First District.
Rick Graywall, 5th District, Rick.
Kurt Bollinger, Ag at Large.
Marcia Guthrie, City of Newport Beach.
Christine Mulholland, Environmental at Large alternate.
John Reed, Camp San Luis Obispo.
George Kendall, County Farm Bureau.
Green, Farm Bureau.
Sue Left, Environmental at Large.
Tom Morrow, RCD.
Andy Fee, San Luis Obispo City Council.
Aaron Floyd, City of San Luis Obispo.
David Shipping, Environment at Large.
Eric Greening, also environmental at large.
Thank you. We'll move on to agenda item number 2, the approval of the January.
Excuse me, who are you?
Oh, gosh. My name is Linda Chipping, and I'm with the Coastal San Luis RCD.
And Ray Diaz, County Public Works.
So moving on to the, it's not the January, it's the February, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. We are going to be approving the February minutes. The agenda says January, which is incorrect.
These are the January minutes, aren't they?
It was canceled, that meeting was
Oh,
canceled.
that's right. That, I knew we lost one. I think so.
Do I have anybody who would like to make a motion to approve?
I so moved. We
Tom
approve.
Tom Mora,
Second.
and a second from Sula for the approval of the February WRAC minutes, February 7th to 2018 WRAC minutes. And we'll do this by voice call.
Dennis Laux,
Yes.
Bill Garfinkel,
Yes.
Linda Seifert,
Yes.
Jim Garen, Greg Graywall,
Yes.
Kurt Bollinger,
Abstain.
Jason Yeager, Greg Nestor, or alternate Tim Walters,
Yes.
Sue Luft,
Yes.
Eric Greening,
Yes.
David Chipping.
Yes.
Linda Chipping,
Yes.
Michael Broadhurst, Tom Mora,
Yes.
Jamie Hendrickson,
Yes.
let's see, John Reed,
Abstain because I wasn't there.
George Kendall,
Yes.
Anthony Lindstrom,
Yes.
Steve Sinton, Barbara Harmon,
Yes.
there's Chris Olaco or Kirk Gonzalez here, Marcia Guthrie,
Yes.
Andy Pease.
Yes.
Craig Armstrong,
Yes.
James Colwell, Tina Meyer. Okay, that's it. Yeah, I got it. Motion carries.
Thank you. Okay. Agenda item number 3, consider submitting the WRAC 2017 annual report to the County Board of Supervisors. I'd like to point out that there was an error in the 3rd paragraph where I enumerate the committee members, and I said there were 2 new county water districts. That should read 1 county water district, and the addition of the Avila Community Services District was added in the past year. And that change will be made to the draft letter that you see in your packet. Any other comments on?
Looks like an accurate.
I think it was a good letter. I think it is a good letter, and I always enjoy looking at these each year to see all of the things that we have addressed and discussed and worked on. So thank you for putting it all together for us.
Bill?
I'll make a motion that we, we recommend that it be passed to the Board of Supervisors.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we accept the cover letter as amended and to send it and the 2017 annual report to the Board of Supervisors. Do I have a second?
You have a motion for?
Okay.
David Chipping.
Yeah. I couldn't tell if I saw Sue's hand or not.
You can have it.
All right.
Sure.
For bylaws?
Oh, yeah, we can just do it by hand.
Okay, we'll just do this by raising your hand. So those in favor of the motion to forward the annual report with the amendments, please raise your hand. And those opposed? And those abstaining? Thank you. On to agenda item number 4, the WRAC elections for a new chairperson and a vice chairperson. Our bylaws state that the member only will vote on this and that the alternates, or actually either can, depending upon which representative is here can vote, that only members can nominate. Is that correct?
Well, the bylaws explicitly state that members are eligible for chair and vice chair. So, because I know that Jamie had expressed interest last week, but she's a member alternate. So, but as far as voting, it's the members present here can vote. But as far as who we can nominate for chair and vice chair, it's members only. So that's and then the way we'll carry this on is someone will nominate. We'll make a motion to nominate someone. Someone will second it, and then we'll discuss, and then we'll call a vote. And I suggest we do the chair first.
Okay, then I will open the floor to members to nominate a new chairperson. David?
I would like to nominate Andy Pease.
I'll second.
I am willing. Interesting.
All right, are there any other nominations? It has been moved by David Chipping and seconded by Eric Greening that we elect Andy Pease as chair for the WRAC for the coming year. Those in favor?
Discussion.
Oh, any discussion?
Thank you, Andy.
Right.
Let's do a roll call on this one.
And we'll do a roll call for this one.
Okay. Dennis Laux.
Yes.
Bill Garfinkel.
Yes.
Linda Seifert.
Yes.
Jim Gary. Greg Raywald.
Yes.
Kurt Bollinger.
Yes.
Jason Yeager. Greg Nestor or Tim Walters.
Yes.
Sue Left.
Yes.
Eric Greening.
Yes.
David Chipping.
Yes.
Linda Chipping.
Yes.
Michael Broderick. Okay. Tom Mora.
Yes.
Jamie Hendrickson.
Yes.
John Reed.
Yes.
George Kendall.
Yes.
Anthony Lindstrom.
Yes.
Steve Sinton.
Yes.
Barbara Harmon.
Yes.
Marcia Guthrie.
Yes.
Andy Pease.
Yes.
Craig Armstrong.
Yes.
I think that's it, unless yeah, no. Right. Looks like it's unanimous. Motion carries 20 yes, 0 no, 0 abstain.
Great.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Very nice to have you. Then we will move on to vice chair. Do I have a nomination for vice chair? Sue?
Yeah, I wanted to nominate Jamie, but since she can't, I don't know, Linda, Seifert, I know that you're brand new here, but It would be great. to have you.
Is this a thankless job or no? So, no. I mean, I'd be happy to do it. It seems interesting. I'll get to know people a little bit better. So.
Do I have any other nominations?
Tina Meyer's not here.
Oh, he's not here. Well, I need a second for this nomination.
I'll second.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded that we elect Linda Cipher as the vice chair for the Water Resources Advisory Committee for the coming year.
Who was the second?
It was Barbara Harmon.
Okay, we'll do the roll call vote. Dennis Laux,
Yes.
Bill Garfinkel,
Yes.
Linda Seifert,
Yes.
Jim Gehring, Greg Raywall,
Yes.
Kurt Bollinger,
Yes.
Tim Walters,
Yep.
Sue Luft,
Yes.
Eric Meany,
Yes.
David Chipping,
Yes.
Linda Chipping,
Yes.
Tom Mora,
Yes.
Jamie Hendrickson,
Yes.
John Reed,
Yes.
George Kendall,
Yes.
Anthony Lindstrom,
Yes.
Steve Sinton,
Yes.
Barbara Harmon,
Yes.
Marcia Guthrie,
Yes.
Andy Peace,
Yes.
Craig Armstrong.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries 20 yes, 0 no's, 0 abstain.
Great. Congratulations. We have a new chair, Andy Peace, and a new vice chair, Linda, is it Seifert? or
It's
Seifert?
Seifert, and if I could say, I don't want you to think I'm not appreciative, but I will not be here for the next meeting. Natalie will be standing in my stead.
Well, Andy, this is your chair.
What's now?
Really?
Seems like you should finish the meeting.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you to Linda. Thanks, everyone. I'm really looking forward to serving in this role. I've been on the with this committee for just a year, so I'm still in the learning stages, and I don't necessarily know everybody's name, so forgive me on that. But I really believe in this group, and I think that the importance of WRAC and the role that we play is only going to continue to increase with the GSPs and the ongoing drought and just kind of a new normal for water in our county. So I think working together for regional success and water resiliency is really, really important. So I'm honored to serve as the chair. All right, so we'll go to the ongoing updates. And any comments or questions on the rain and reservoir report? Okay. Groundwater basin management efforts. Oh, Eric.
Thank you. Yeah. Question on the Santa Maria Basin fringe area. The Board of Supervisors yesterday kicked off a public process relative to requesting a boundary modification in the Pismo Creek area. Apparently the study is still in production, so I don't know who can answer these questions, but my questions are, number one, I thought there was a sort of a designated time a couple of years back for basin boundary modifications to be heard and decided, and apparently there's a new round of them, or at least there's this one. Then, given that we don't know exactly yet what modification is being asked for, apparently there are two options being considered to be asked for. I'm wondering, if the study is ambiguous, or what, why we're still wondering what we're asking for, and why the process is beginning ahead of the completion and publication of the study. So I guess those are my questions on this.
Thank you. Thankfully, we have staff standing up and up.
Hi, Courtney Howard, County Public Works, Water Resources Division. So it is round 2. There is now a new opportunity. There was one in the past. We didn't have the technical study for the Santa Maria Basin that we would have needed to pursue a boundary modification at that time. So what we had been doing is getting the money procured and the study underway, and so now we do have the technical analysis of what the hydrogeology is in those fringe areas, and so we're trying to understand scientifically what's going on there and how it compares to the state standards for what a basin is. And there's a whole list of regulations and criteria that you can kind of, what kind of science do you need to justify any type of change, whether it's creating a sub-basin or saying it's not a basin at all, or whatever type of change might be necessary. At a basic level, the old maps were at this higher scale, and so now we have new, better maps, and so at a minimum we could more accurately map the alluvium, along the creek channels and such. So that's one thing we're looking at. But we're really looking at the hydrogeologic connectivity between the fringe areas and the main part of the basin, and is there anything that's an impediment to flow between the fringe areas and the main area of the basin. And so there's in the adjudication there was the fault that was the technical justification for why they designated the basin the way they did. And so is there a nexus in that study? And so as with all public processes, there's a very robust public outreach process and administrative steps to take. So we've done the technical study, and we think there's some science there that warrants some level of change, but we want to present that technical information to the public, and then talk about where the science is kind of leaning, and compare that to what the DWR standards are. And in order to ultimately submit something specific, you first have to notify everyone that you're looking at it. And so that's what the action was on Tuesday, was the formal, hey everybody, we're looking at it, and through the board, and also through our public meetings and our press releases and such. So it's sort of there's a process that we're trying to follow in accordance with the state regulations. And so that's where we're at right now. We had done some technical work. We looked at the science, and it might be exclusion, or it might be sub-basin because of the fault, but then there's a thickness to the alluvial aquifer, so DWR has a certain kind of standard for if it's this thick of saturated alluvium, then it's actually a basin. But if it was dry and it's a thin layer, then it's not really a basin. So we're in the process of comparing that and talking with DWR and trying to understand that, we make sure we understand their criteria, and also get public input on the implications of any changes to the boundary. So, sorry, long-winded answer.
Thank you, though. That's appreciated. So the decision on what to ask for, then, it appears from the supervisor's report we can expect that within 2 months. Will we have a firm scientific basis for knowing what we're asking for within 2 months?
Yeah, we anticipate having a public draft at the end of the month based on the input we got from the stakeholder workshops and the board meeting, and also feedback from DWR when we show them sort of the science we have. And when we compare against the checklist, then we're going to go ahead and do a technical report on what we think is the best approach for the boundary modification request, and then that will be published, and then we'll get another round of stakeholder input on the proposed approach, the specific proposed approach. And so that'll be the public meetings, and then any comments on the technical report that outlines all that, and then we'll have a board hearing. So those are the kind of the 3 avenues for getting input on whether or not that's supportable.
Thank you. It sounds like a lot is going to happen very quickly somehow.
Yeah, because June 30th is the deadline for submitting it to the state, and there's all those procedures in between.
Is the geology done? There are these nice geologic cross sections, but they seem a little thin at the Pismo end. And I'm just wondering, is there any more being done on specifically on the Pismo Creek intersection with the rest of the basin? Or is the geology essentially done? And
I think the geology is essentially done, and now they've got to look at the submittal requirements for basin boundary modification and make sure they have any additional water quality or water level graphics and information specifically tied to those different criteria. And so we're just, based on all the feedback we got in our initial look, I literally just came out of a meeting with the consultant to say, okay, we're kind of leaning this way, we're going to check with DWR, and then move forward on producing that tech memo for everyone to evaluate. So that's sort of our process we're walking through.
Thank you.
All right. Any more comments or questions about the groundwater basin management efforts? Okay. Various county water programs, policies, and ordinance. Any comments or questions? And then open reporting on water conservation opportunities and information.
I'll comment.
Sure.
Last Tuesday, the Atascadero hosted a joint annual meeting of all the water conservation staff from Santa Barbara and Obispo County. And we had an all-day long meeting. It was really cool. We had about from representatives from Goleta, Santa Maria, Santa Barbara, Montecito, Santa Maria, I'm trying to think who else, in the county of Santa Barbara County come on up, and then various members of San Luis Obispo County as well. And we got a great presentation and information on the new California Water Efficiency Partnership from the executive director of the Alliance for Water Efficiency. She called in from Chicago and just kind of gave us a direction that the state's going and things we might see coming down. One of the highlights for me was hearing the gentleman from Montecito talk about their experiences firsthand, and he lived in it, and he's been doing it for 3 weeks, and it was a pretty wild ride, and kind of what maybe if there were any takeaways, but it was really nice to actually offer them a nice lunch and give them, they kind of took a day off because all their conservation staff has been down at the command center in Santa Barbara. We also shared, we do this every year. This is about the 14th year I've done it with them, and we share different water conservation programs. And sometimes we can hopefully maybe partner on some stuff in southern San Luis Obispo County and in the Santa Maria area hopefully this year. So this is something we do, and I just want to let you guys know that we're out there working hard.
Thank you. All right, and then there's an ongoing item as far as WRAC or Sigma mail-in updates, making sure that everybody is online to do that. Okay, then going to the next item 6, consider forming an ad hoc subcommittee to review the proposed San Luis Obispo County Flood Control and Water Conservation District budget for fiscal year 2018-2019. Glenn, do you want to introduce that item?
Yeah, sure. Courtney is also available to answer any questions, but typically every year we submit the budget for the flood control, and we also give opportunity for the WRAC if they want to comment on it. There's a couple of ways to go. We could consider forming a subcommittee to review the budget, prior to it being presented in May, because otherwise the other option is when the budget gets drafted, Courtney was going to present it to you all in May, where you can vote yes or no at that point. So I guess the choice right now is, do you want to be involved with the process prior to the draft being formalized in May for Courtney to present? So that's
all right. So it sounds like we can either wait to May, but then it's pretty much done at that point, or we can have an ad hoc to review ahead of time and provide feedback a little earlier. Is that
yes.
fair to say? All right. Eric.
Are we expecting any significant changes from the last year's budget or emerging issues?
That's a good question. Me?
I'd say as of today, it should be pretty much status quo as we did last year. Continuing with the programs that are outlined in the budget and have not been asked to donate to Sigma beyond what we already do in the flood control district budget. Basically all the staffing is covered by the flood control district budget. So far status quo.
Could you identify where the changes will occur? What kind of changes will occur? Like, is inflation going to mean everything's going to go up a little bit, or is there some cost cutting going on and everything's going to come down a little bit?
I think the budget itself is going to be very similar to what we saw last year. We do have a fuller staff, but we also had the 5-year plan where, did I include that for you this time? But where every year we have a kind of an increment to support technical studies and kind of partner for those things. So it may go up or down depending on when those projects come up in the 5-year plan. But I don't see any large shifts that signify a new program or service.
All right, Barbara.
I think when the ad hoc committee or the concern that came up with this group was because there was the formation of Courtney's department basically to handle Sigma. And there was a lot of back and forth and just trying to wrap ourselves around the additional cost it was going to take to monitor what the state requires. So if it's a status quo with not any real big ticket items, then I'd be comfortable waiting until May to just, review the highlights of it based on Courtney's representation. So that's my input on that.
Great. All right. So the suggestion at this point is likely, if it is generally status quo, that we wait until May. Is there anybody who feels otherwise, that we should go ahead and form an ad hoc? All right. So, yeah.
Yeah, Courtney, with the EPC not going to be part of the MOA, they part of the grant application to support our work on that. Is the money for that is going to go away, a couple hundred, 250,000, something like that. Is there any discussion yet about what you do without that funding? Are we going to get less money, or is somebody going to have to pay more?
It's a little tricky because it's sort of, you're guessing at how much staff time you're going to spend across the time frame of the grant. So with that dollar amount, I'm anticipating that the in-kind will have enough, just what we have to do to support the effort anyway, to match what we need to match for the grant. I'm not too worried about that.
By we, the county, or everybody?
Everybody. Yeah, everybody turning in all the hours they've spent with the coordinating committee or workshops or whatever else. I think it's going to add up pretty quick. But that's just my crystal ball on it. It is something that we'll have to watch, make sure that we're matching the one-to-one that's required for the grant. But there have been a lot of expenditures that are eligible. So once we actually get all those dollars and cents itemized and submitted to the state, we'll have a better understanding of if that one-to-one is going to be met. But that level, it's not like it's $1 million. If it was up that high, I would be more worried. But it's in the few $100,000 range. I think we'll be able to come up with a lot of in-kind to make up for that. That we would have done anyway, or might have already done. But it is something to watch. And we're going to have to document that in our grant, the City Paso's grant agreement with the state, and kind of spell it all out.
Eric?
Speaking of matching grants, as I recall, when the decision was made to essentially have the county fund this Sigma efforts in all the basins, one of the sources that had been planned to be spent otherwise and was diverted to that was money available for matching grants. I think it was like 600 and something thousand. Is that kind of line item being restored in this coming year's budget, or is it still being diverted?
It was a one-time diversion last year. As of today, I'm not expected to do a one-time diversion this coming year.
Thank you.
Courtney, the grant application for the matching funds was for $1.5 million, and the projected cost from the people who want to be hired to do the job is 1.3. So it's already still in the ballpark just because it's not the same amount of money. It'll be being discussed after this meeting, after the GSA meeting will be held at 4 o'clock today. I'm talking about what's going on with the grant and what's going on with the company that they're going to hire to help write the GSP.
And the budget's matching and grant will have to be monitored, but there's going to be a lot of work done. So I think, and I think WR is used to, you have your cost projections and then you do quarterly reports to show if it's matching what you projected and you make adjustments. So I think they're kind of used to that. But definitely something that's a part of grant agreements.
Any other comments or questions? So hearing no direct interest in an ad hoc committee, I think we'll pass on that and wait until the budget in May.
If there's changes in the next 2 months, I apologize, but I will report out in May and present the details of what we put together.
Right, and if something does change dramatically, where we need to have, an emergency session or, something to participate more fully, just let us know.
Okay.
Make something happen. Great, thank you.
I do have one request. Usually you send out your preliminary budget with all of the line item sheets. And would those be available to us now so that we could at least start thinking about and looking at it?
They aren't ready now. Yeah, that's why I know you're doing your water loss seminar next month. So that was why it was one it was going to have to be May, but I wanted to make sure you had an opportunity to think about it subcommittee first. So.
All right, but if it does come up earlier, it can go ahead of the regular agenda. Okay. Give us a little more time. Okay. All right, moving to item 7, consider forming an ad hoc subcommittee to consider additional water conservation measures that can be submitted to the Board of Supervisors for their consideration. Introduce this item.
Yeah, actually, I think, lost my page. So, as was mentioned last week, there was an idea to formalize additional water conservation measures for the whole county. And at that time, it was Sherry Danoff was the one that championed that, and actually it was her role of actually having an ongoing update for water conservation. So the item 4 here is that is to formalize it. It's to actually discuss having a committee to discuss what conservation measures can be suggested for countywide action and it's going to be crafted as a letter drafted by the ad hoc committee to be presented here for everyone's approval, and then those recommendations to be sent off to the board as a letter from the WRAC officially. So that's in essence what that is. And I was hoping that Linda would also have something to add on this too. So.
Well, I would like to add something to that. Sherry was very adamant that, as the wording says in the packet staff report, that we're in serious drought situations, and we shouldn't wait until we're behind the 8 ball before we decide that we need to be looking at alternatives. And in talking with Sherry, some of the suggestions have been that maybe we could meet with the county planning department personnel, who might, if they have some ideas already in the works, we could be looking at maybe some other counties to see what is being advanced or promoted in counties that have the same type of environmental impacts or lack of water that we have, and then report back to you what some of the suggestions were from planning department that might be reasonable to suggest to the board of supervisors, and also anything that we felt was worthy of anything that we had seen happening in other parts of the state.
All right, so it sounds like the potential for an ad hoc committee, the responsibilities would be looking at best practices or new ideas from other areas, meeting with staff, conferring, perhaps bringing some options back to this body, and then draft a letter to collectively go in front.
Are we looking at brick in the toilet sort of stuff, or are we looking at mandatory, like Santa Barbara had, cutbacks on all agencies down to like 50% of what you had? Are we looking at big muscle here, or are we looking at small stuff?
No, she was saying she wanted to see us move beyond the toilet retrofits and the cash for grass type of thing, that we should be looking at some.
I would imagine there could be a spectrum, some that are, easy retrofit kinds of things that are low cost but also potentially low impact, and then if the committee feels like, gosh, there's this great practice that we really could implement that's a little higher impact, I would imagine we could consider it as well. Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and move that we form an ad hoc committee. I talked to Sherry, and she was very, and this is what her passion is. And I know she wanted to be here today to talk about this particular issue, but was out of town and knew that she couldn't make it. But I don't think we can ever not continue to look at the issues around conservation, particularly with the kind of drought conditions that we've been in. So if we don't come up with anything better than the bricks in the toilet, so be it. But on the other hand, knowing that that's the best we can do, I think is something that we need to find out. So I would move that we form the ad hoc committee.
Okay.
And I would second that.
Great, thank you. So it's been moved and seconded to form the ad hoc committee. We vote on forming it first and then see if we can fill it?
Yes. Suppose we could just do a hand raising vote.
Yeah, I'd be fine with that. All in favor of forming an ad hoc committee, please raise your hand. Great, thank you. Any opposed? Abstains? 2 abstentions. That's a good mess. All right. Motion carries. All right. So, who would like to serve?
I'm not volunteering, but I'm just going to.
Your hand came up. You're in. Sorry.
Blue Ribbon
Just like an
Committee
option.
did go through a lot of this stuff, so we're not starting from scratch here. There's a whole list of conservation ideas that are in the Blue Ribbon Committee recommendations for conservation that will be applicable everywhere.
All right. So there's some good resources from the Blue Ribbon Committee. Thank you.
For those of you foolish enough to volunteer.
All right. So who is?
I'm foolish.
All right. Linda.
Foolish people. Okay.
Linda, and sorry. What's it? Steph. Right. Thank you. Others? And David. Thank you. Anyone else? Any hands, light work, that kind of thing? All right. Well, thank you, everyone. So we have Linda, Steph, and David forming this.
Yeah, I was going to
Christine?
say that since Sherry is so passionate
Oh,
about
Sherry.
this, she probably should be written down as a probable member, right? Don't you think that she wants to be on the committee?
I think she would like to be on it, so I just don't know what the rules are.
Well, yeah.
With the vote
A
of the
public
members,
can
we
be a
can-
member, but it'll have to follow Brown Act rules. So, I mean, it's possible, but you have to follow the laws.
I would appreciate seeing somebody from a Golden State or something like that, someone who is a water serving agency that has a sort of fiscal situation that it will be affected by whatever happens. In terms of the committee, I'd like to sort of round up all possible comments on the fiscal implications of what might be happening here. Any volunteers from a water service agency would be appreciated, I think, for me.
So, I'd be happy to join an ad hoc as well. So,
San Luis Obispo is certainly a water service agency.
Yeah.
certainly qualified.
Very public budget.
Okay. And then we'll need to confirm the process if we have Sherry on board as
Yes.
writing. Okay. Great. So, who will be the convener of this group? Linda, thank you. With all the extra time on our hands.
I have. Yeah, I like that. I have time now.
Thank you. All right. Anything else on that item? Suggestion, feedback? Okay, here we go to item 8, a report from the ad hoc subcommittee to plan a water law informational forum. Consider actions. David, are you presenting on that? Okay. Or Ray, as far as the speakers?
No, I haven't been part of that. That came out of my hands. The speakers. I thought you guys were doing that.
Well, let's see. I can give this a try. As far as the, we're still, so next month will be the water law informational session. We've secured the, it'll be at the county, the Board of Supervisors chambers to provide a little bit more space. And the speakers, we do have the one speaker confirmed that we had spoken of last time, Stephanie Hastings. And then we were tracking an attorney from the Water Resources, and then the first person couldn't make that date. Did we get confirmation, Linda? Somebody else? Or Ray?
Yeah, we were trying to get someone from DWR, but I'm afraid they can't make it. But someone from State Water Board is interested in going. So, I just need to get confirmation on that. But yeah, someone from State Water Resources is going, but not DWR.
Gotcha. And then we'll get, I think, a third person that perhaps Stephanie, I think, will help us to kind of fill out that panel. And any other updates on that? So hopefully everybody can come. It's going to be wide open to the public. We'll put together a flyer in the next week or so once we firm up the folks who are going to be presenting. And if you could distribute it for anybody, especially who's going to be working on groundwater sustainability plans, it would be a terrific time to make sure we're all on the kind of have the same foundational knowledge on some of these water law issues.
Yeah, just make a comment. When I was rounding up the questions that all of you were asking, there's a tremendous amount of stuff on internal policing under the SDMA. And a lot of people are concerned about property rights and other such things, and who can tell me what to do, sort of questions like that. So I think it would be very useful if those of you who are associated with GSAs, etc., making the plans, that you get all the people who might be involved in that thing coming to the meeting. You get people who might learn and also educate us on the things that they have found. That will be extremely useful.
Do we have a date for the meeting yet?
Yeah, so it's instead of the WRAC next time, so that would be,
April 4th.
Great, thank you.
And it's at 2 o'clock.
yeah, so
2 to
instead of
4.
1:30, it'll be 2 to 4, April 4th.
And will be this venue at the library?
No, it'll be at the board chambers.
The one on Monterey?
Yes.
Great,
Yeah.
thank you.
I think the reason for the later start is to be sure the Council of Governments is done in that same room.
Thank you. Debbie?
Related to the flyer, could you send the RAC members email link to that? There might be a way to expedite if we just had an email link and we can forward it to people that we think might be interested in attending just through the email process.
Yeah, terrific.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments on that item? Eric?
Will it be run as a meeting of the RAC with lots of guests, or will it be run as simply a public forum and will postpone all the things like consideration of the previous month's minutes until May? I would kind of advocate for the latter if we're going to invite a lot of people. I know it's a normal RAC date.
Right, I think we talked about doing just that, but that it would be a formal meeting. It would still be a meeting of RAC.
But the only thing on the agenda would be
The
that.
only
We
thing on
wouldn't
the
be doing
agenda,
our normal
correct.
routine business.
Correct. Okay. Yes, Stephanie?
Is there going to be a moderator of the panel?
Yes. And I think Linda Chipping agreed to take on that role.
And will the attorneys be sort of pre-assigned questions based on their area of expertise?
So our thinking is that we would have kind of a broad representation. They will all or have already seen that, multi-pages of questions. They might do kind of a coordination amongst themselves to take on some of the introductory comments as far as the things that just, are not particularly controversial. And then other ones, Linda will pose a question and each of them will get a chance to respond either within their area of expertise or things that haven't been decided yet, their opinion on that item. And then our plan is to finish with enough time to have at least maybe 20 minutes for questions from the floor. All right, good question, thank you. Anything else on that one?
Thanks to all who have been working on it.
Yeah, thank you. Exciting. Looking forward to that. Okay, and with that, we're on to item 9, which is discussing future agenda items. David.
I've got one for general discussion, and that is, some of you may have seen in the paper the issue of vineyards moving out of the East Paso Robles area to the West Paso Robles area on the basis of trying to get out of the basin, and speculation about what that means to the small vineyards and all the landowners scattered, for example, in the Adelaida area. And I know there is no particular water law that I can find that governs how you control extractions on fractured aquifers and on bedrock aquifers where there's no alluvium. But it's going to become a major issue, especially in terms of drought. And I don't know how we can do this, but exploring what has happened or how other states or counties have handled issues of general drawdown in non-alluvial basins might be an interesting way to go. I don't know what the group think about that, but there may be nothing we can do about it under current existing water law, and it may not be worth going down that path if people don't think it's worth going down because of that.
I would comment, David, that perhaps that is something that the Conservation Ad Hoc Committee can address. That's exactly the sort of thing that when we're looking at groundwater in general and conservation methods, it's not just don't flush your toilet or put a brick, but how do we keep people from overdrawing the basins? And that kind of thing seems to me could come under that committee's purview of looking at how do we conserve water. And ag is gonna have to step up and be a part of that. It's not just households or businesses or rationing water. Ag's gonna have to ration too. And if we start looking, and I know the issue you're talking about, it really was interesting to me to read about it, but it seems to me that might be something that that committee can be talking about too, if we have to stretch where law is right now and how we're going to move in the future. Making really radical recommendations could come out of that committee.
Thank you. Derek.
One such recommendation, it was discussed for a little while, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and then just kind of went away, was the idea of creating 2 agriculture zones, extensive and intensive, and actually requiring a zone change to go from the one to the other. In other words, but I will remind us that we kind of touched on this issue of fractured rock when the Letitia project was in front of us. And certainly ag clusters are like a particularly sore spot relative to this, because there's an incentive for increasing the extraction of water and intensifying the agriculture, because then you get more building entitlements. Fortunately, Letitia was voted down, but that's kind of the last time we looked at that issue, and I agree. The issue of, because Sigma is taking so much bandwidth right now with the large basins, the fact that many people are dependent on these small fractured rock, often there hasn't even been any real science or measurement done of what's there, and they're just drawing on it and hoping they can keep drawing on it tomorrow. So hopefully we'll form something, but I think it may be in the purview of that conservation group if they're looking at possible land use regulation and sitting down with planning.
This is a really interesting topic. We're talking about, you can look at it different ways. One way to look at it is whether the glass is half empty or half full, or whether you're just emptying the glass, if you're also trying to fill it back up. We talk about conservation, but I think we also have to talk about what could also be done to recharge, even in fractured areas, even in bedrock areas. I know that's being looked at in the Sigma areas. A lot of work's being done. I don't know anything about fractured reservoirs to speak of, or how it's done in the Adelaide area, the West Paso area. But it's not just a conservation thing, it's also how can we add back, or what can we do to encourage add back. And I don't know if that should be part of this committee's purview or not.
David?
Yeah, my only concern about giving it to that committee that's already been formed on Linda is it's an awfully big room to add to the house. I was thinking that it was sort of a separate issue, and although I'd like a few more people on the committee, I think, if we're going to take on that whole issue of groundwater law and recharge, on a sort of regional scale.
Okay.
I was just going to mention that there are a number of growers on the west side who have farmed very sustainably and have been noted for that. And it would be worthwhile, I think, for the people on this committee to hear from some of those. Jason Haas at Tawas Creek has been recognized for that, and Jason Yeager, who is on this committee now and manages the Niner Wine Estates. They have done some very creative things, both in managing their use of water and in recharging. So it's worth it in these discussions to talk to people, I think, who are engaged in these practices and learn more about what it is they do to conserve water.
It seems like there's an opportunity to educate the whole group, and then if we want to weigh in with something that would be a specific conservation measure recommendation. But in any case, doing the people who are doing this well already, let's maybe have an opportunity for them to come in.
Could I suggest that if we are going to get into ag and land use, that somebody from ag and land use joins the group? That would help. Can we volunteer for this? We're talking about the committee.
The committee that we set up.
Yes.
The conservation.
I'm talking about
Manager.
augmenting it because people have been talking about increasing the scope of the things that the committee would look at. So I'm just wondering to try and get some more people on the committee who will be more expert on that sort of thing. That's all.
Okay. Hold that thought. Linda?
In listening, I think this is really interesting. I'm actually really glad that I raised my hand to be part of that committee, because I do think that the scope of the work can be quite large if it chooses to do that. But more than anything, it strikes me that there's just an amazing number of ideas in the room right here, which I would think that we might want to start by just tapping with what resources we have internally. But secondarily, I do think that the first role of the committee ought to be to create an outline of, of all of these different kind of ideas or areas. And it may not be that it's a single choice or that it's a single committee responsibility, but that from really taking a look at conservation and thinking big, we actually come up with a plan about different areas that we could attack. And one might be ag, and putting ag in kind of a framework where they can participate in that. If we're looking at home uses, if we're looking at how it affects the private industry, what government's responsibility is. I mean, I think there's a million different ways to look at it, but that it can be structured and organized as part of a first report back from the subcommittee.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable approach, kind of have the group convene, think of the areas, consider, is there somebody missing from the small group, or is it really that group is a steering committee that can pull from other sources and bring ideas together, so that's not overwhelmed from the beginning, but maybe ends up, there might be spillover for areas that have a lot of potential that need more exploration. Sounds good. Okay.
So
Jeff?
from that discussion, as far as an agenda item that we could add for the future, I have the water conservation practices from wineries on the west side. First, I have here like a presentation on water conservation practices from wineries on the west side, something like that.
Steph?
To add to the areas of interest or its own agenda item, groundwater dependent ecosystems is a term that is beginning to be used in reference to SGMA, and there is, as we're making comments, and Central Coast has been making comments on the fringe areas and other SGMA related issues, we're attempting to bring that to the conversation so that it's more part of our lingo. We begin to understand what it means and how it plays a role for sustainable groundwater management. So groundwater dependent ecosystems, GDE.
And do you have a thought about who might be a good, I mean, I can imagine somebody coming in and presenting on that item?
Somebody from our staff might be able to do that.
Yeah. Okay, great. Okay. Any others? All right. And then moving on to item 10, last item, which is just public comment. Any open public comment? All right. Great job, everyone. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.
Wait till your May meeting. Your May meeting will really look it up.
Yeah, right.
What
Thank you.
Sorry, I was actually expecting
Oh, yeah.
I was expecting you, but I forgot that.
That's right.
So what I normally do is I'll prepare the minutes, and then I email it to the chair and vice chair.
Bye, hello.
And then also
At any rate, I appreciate your comments.
I sent it to
Yeah, we did.
sometimes it's like, sometimes I'm so yeah, I go based on.
But I couldn't believe how much the war is developed around.
Usually like
It was pretty interesting. My job to try to find someone to come up here because, and by the way, I wasn't terribly successful in it. So, I don't hold my son.
I believe that is correct. So my intention was to do is after our meeting, hear what we had back from GW some of the
Solano, so it's kind of a combination of Solano, it's about halfway between Sacramento and San Francisco. Got Vallejo, Benicia, I'm sorry? Maine.